Alright, Matt, Sleep Notes here, and today it is time for the second episode of Top 10 Tuesday. In this episode, we'll be looking at the top 10, or my top 10, albums released in the 2000s. That is, anything released in the year 2000, in the year 2009, or any of the years in between. 2010 doesn't count, 1999 doesn't count. I don't care if the album got big, maybe if it was released in the 90s and it got big in the 2000s, that still doesn't count. Because I see that quite a lot. Stuff like Californication by Red Hot Chili Peppers is always thrown in that kind of argument, or at least a single list. So I'm not going to be counting that in my video today. Just going to be looking at albums that were released in the time frame that I specified. Now I would like to apologise that this is not going out on Tuesday. I had a problem with the camera. I wasn't recording anything, which is why I've not been able to upload any videos. But it's working again now, and this is the first one. I didn't want to miss an episode. I thought this was a particularly good episode, and I've got some even better ones lined up for the next few weeks as we approach Christmas and New Year. So it's I think it was important to do this before I forgot and put it aside, because it's just an interesting topic for me, because the 2000s is such a big era in music for me, for a lot of people, but for me personally, obviously that was the time I was growing up in, and I think there was some great music released in the time, and these 10 albums are, well, in my opinion, the best. I will also stick 5 honourable mentions in the description if you want to check those out, and let's get into it. And I'd also like to add that I will not be including more than one album from an artist, just to make it more fair. It wouldn't be all like 10 from one band or something ridiculous like that, but there would be 2 or 3 entries from a couple of bands that you're gonna see. So I've limited it to one, just to make it a bit more varied, a bit more interesting for you watching it. So, in 10th place, the opening entry on the list is The Age of the Understatement by the Last Shadow Puppets. Their 2008 debut album, the first of 2. They finally made the second one this year. If you don't know the Last Shadow Puppets, it's Alex Turner from Arctic Monkeys, the lead singer, plus Miles Kane, who's not quite as well known, but he's had a notable solo career. He's been in a couple of bands as well. But this is what he's most famous for, I think, and it's just a really interesting little side project from the two of them. You have the two of them do the majority of the work, all the vocal work, the writing. We get producers, they bring in drummers as well, and it's mainly those two. And if you like either Arctic Monkeys or if you like any Miles Kane stuff, then I think you'll like this. And even if you don't, you should still like this anyway, because it's not massively similar to Arctic Monkeys. It just has kind of tones to it. It's kind of if Arctic Monkeys and Muse were to combine. It's very orchestral, very theatric. It's a really brilliant album. It's a very cohesive album from start to finish. It all kind of flows together very nicely, fits in like a puzzle. It's it's got fast songs, it's got slow songs. The lyricism is incredible. I'm going to cover lyricists in the future, in one of my future videos. This is one of the best lyrical albums I've heard. The song My Mistakes Were Made For You is especially well written. As a whole, the album just is... I love the theatrical, the orchestral side of it, and it's got the energy that you got from the early Arctic Monkeys work in there as well. It's definitely an album I would recommend, not just for Arctic Monkeys fans, just for anyone who's interested in something. Okay, it's a little bit over the top, but I don't think that takes away from the record, and that is why it's my 10th favourite album from the 2000s. The special song, the key songs that I'm going to highlight 2 key songs from each record. And for this one, I'm going to highlight My Mistakes Were Made For You, and I'm going to highlight the title track, The Age of the Understatement. Like I say, the My Mystic Swimming Few is such a pretty, beautiful song, amazing lyrics. The title track also has really clever wordplay, um, and great imagery. And that Alex Turner's one of my favourite lyricists, but it's got that kind of it's very much a larger than life song. It's got massive Muse hints, that song has as well. So if you like Muse, check it out. Now my number 9 entry is the 2001 debut album from the indie alt rock garage rock band The Strokes. Is This It? This is a classic album. A lot of people cite it as like an influence or an album that they really connect with. It's very carefree. It's very kind of sort of. It's got a little bit rebellious maybe. There's kind of punk feels to it as well. Um, but it's got some great sing along tracks. Last Night or Someday. Personally, I really like the title track, and the track called Soda I think is really underrated. I think a lot of the songs here are quite underrated, and New York City Cops is another one which was unfortunately left off the American release because it was in 2001 with the whole 9/11 thing. They didn't want to sort of evoke any bad sort of memories or thoughts within people, um, which is a shame because the song is great, but the album, it has so many good songs, it can kind of get away with not including it. It's I mean, it is a classic. It is a classic. 2001 is, it's nearly 16 years ago. It pretty much cemented the Strokes as a top tier band. They went on to have more hits: Reptilia, You Only Live Once, Juice Box. The list goes on and on. They're one of the most prolific and successful indie or alt bands of the 2000s, and even this year they put out a pretty interesting little EP. I wasn't crazy for it, but the track Oblivious, the sort of lead single off that, is a really great song, and it's one of my favourite Strokes songs as well. Is This It is just it really does sum up the sort of whole kind of music scene at the time as well. I think there was a lot of stuff like this. It was kind of a revival, in the 90s there was some great indie bands, Britpop bands and that, but this kind of brought it straight back into mainstream attention, and a lot of bands that followed, the Libertines, Arctic Monkeys, took a lot of learnt a lot of lessons from this band, and they were quite influenced by them. Julian Casablancas is an incredible vocalist as well, and you hear that on this album a lot. The key songs I'm going to highlight is I already mentioned the title track, Is This It, the opening song. That's a great one, a great way to open the record, and it's going to have to be Last Night, isn't it? It's such a classic song now. You can't not sing when it comes on. Number 8 on my list is Kasabian's third album, West Rider Pauper Lunatic Asylum, 2009, their third studio album. It kind of, it's a bit of a departure. Their first couple of records were very kind of Manchester, baggy, Britpop influenced. To varying sort of successes. The first album is was generally received pretty well. I still play it a lot. The second album, Empire, I personally do like Empire, but I know a lot of people thought it was quite unfocused and there wasn't quite so much consistency in quality. There was definitely some great songs on there. Title track, Shoot the Runner, the Doberman, but a lot of people were kind of disappointed by that. This album, however, were a lot fewer people disappointed by. It's got kind of a psychedelic edge to it. It's a bit more experimental. It is a departure. It's not so much straightforward as like Brit rock, but it still keeps that kind of anthemic quality. Fire is a song that everyone I'm sure knows. That's a definite anthem if I've ever heard one. Vlad the Impaler as well, fantastic. This is a band I'd really like to see live, and I'm hoping that they're at some festivals in the summer, because I've not had a chance to see them yet. And these songs, like I say, anthems, they would work. I've seen footage of them live. They just look so fun. It's such a fun band. It's a feel good band. It's a party band. Underdog, sort of fast fuse. There's a lot of fantastic songs on here, and I like how you can hear the psychedelic influences. You hear a lot of Beatles influences in a lot of their music anyway, but you kind of hear a lot of Pink Floyd influence on this record, especially on the sort of title track. It's not really exactly a title track, but it's the closest they come, and it does sound a lot like an early Pink Floyd song. It's like something off Pipe at the Gates of Dawn or something. The album is really well rounded. I have it here on a 10-inch vinyl, which is really interesting, with 2 discs. It's not your standard LP, so that's quite a fun little thing to own. And I think all the albums, their vinyl releases are all like that. I think I definitely saw Empire in the shop when we got that, but I went for that one because it is my favourite Kasabian album. Hence, it's the one in the list, and it is number 8. My favourite tracks on here, the key tracks, would be, as cliche as it is, Fire. It's still my Kasabian song, favourite Kasabian song. As much as I've listened to other records and explored their catalogue, I love Kasabian, but Fire is still up there, one of my favourites. It's the favourite off this album. And I'd also like to highlight the opening song, Where Did All the Love Go? I really like Serge Pizzorno's vocals in this song. In 7th place, I have the White Stripes' 4th studio album, Elephant, and it's the first of 2 2003 entries in this top 10. 2003 was a great year. This and the one I'll mention when I come to it. You had Radiohead and Muse and The Strokes, Yeahs, Metallica Saint Anger, controversial I know, but I mentioned it on my top 10 Metallica albums if you heard that or watched that video. And also from this point onwards, all of these albums from this through to number 1 all have a 5-star rating on my Rate Your Music account, which you can access in the description. If you want to add me as a friend on that, go ahead, or just look at my lists or my ratings, whatever you want. It's always fun to do that. But this is an album which made me fall in love with the White Stripes, as it has for a lot of people. So it still remains my favourite, although they have a very strong discography. They don't really have a weak record. And as much as I love White Blood Cells or Icky Thump, I know a lot of people go with Vestigial. For me, I like it. I don't love it as much as the others. This is still the album that I keep returning to if I want to listen to the White Stripes. Ignoring the Seven Nation Army, which is my favourite song on this album, by the way. Even ignoring that, there's so many great deeper cuts on here. You got Meg does some nice vocals on here even, and I don't know what it is, why this album always stood out to me more than the others. It's just a very colourful record. They always were a fun band, the White Stripes, but they always had a sensitive side as well. This album is no exception. You Got Her in Your Pocket is quite a sweet song, but there's so many jam sort of tracks on here. You've got all kind of like, it does sound a lot like Jack and Meg are just jamming a lot of the time. Jack sort of does all these sort of riffs, and he goes off like sort of like he just kind of gets lost in his in his music, and just sort of plays and goes on this kind of like twists and turns and this big sort of journey. It's really, you can feel when you listen to it the fun they had making it. I presume, because that's how it comes across, and that really makes it a fun record to play and to listen to. Even Ball and Biscuit, for example, is quite a long song. It's about 7 minutes long, but it doesn't feel like that because these songs are all just such a enjoyable to listen to, that you kind of forget that you're listening to music, and you just kind of feel like it's just a part of you. That sounds a bit cheesy, but I don't know how else to describe it. It's kind of indescribable, this record, for me. It's so good. I don't think they've put a foot wrong. My key songs, I'm gonna go with. It's really tough with this one, but I'm gonna go with Little Acorns. Is a very underrated song. I like the kind of the spoken word bit at the beginning. It's kind of it's an underrated White Stripes song. I think it's not a song that gets enough appreciation. You get a lot of it's one of the it's one of those jammy songs, like I said. But I don't know. The lyrics, especially, I really like the lyrics. The line "Be like the squirrel girl, be like the squirrel" was my Twitter bio for a while. Which I think it's just quite an amusing line, really. It is a great song. I remember making a sort of best of White Stripes playlist, and I put it as the opening track because it does grab your attention. It's a very ear catching, I suppose is a good word. It's I just think it's really underrated, and I think it should get more appreciation. And my other key song is going to be The Hardest Button to Button. Again, lyrically, it's quite entertaining, quite funny, but overall the song, like instrumentally, it just has that fun blues feel to it that pretty much all the songs do, the majority of them, apart from the slower ones. So that's my other key track. Now, I mentioned in the White Stripes part of this video that there were two records from the year 2003, and they happen to be next to each other. This is the other one. It is Mars Volta's debut record, The Hours in the Comatorium, and this album is crazy. It's so over the top, it's so overdone, but I think it's just brilliant. This and the album that followed, Francis the Mute, it doesn't get a lot better than this, I don't think, in terms of sort of hard rock, progressive rock kind of music. It's very experimental, kind of spacey, kind of like Muse on steroids. Muse is a good band to get into if you can't quite hack this lot, but they made some good stuff after this, Bedlam and Goliath, Amputecture, but this album is still my favourite. Francis the Mute and this album is still my two favourites, and as great as Francis the Mute is, I love The Widow, for example, from that song, and which is a single, which was surprisingly successful in the UK, but pretty much every song on that album is solid, but this album I just think is a little bit better. A song on here called Televators is very sort of soft and beautiful. One of the sort of sadder songs they've got. It's a very emotional track, I think, for the band. Obviously they're not together anymore, but still. And the Drunk Ship of Lanterns, and Roulette Dares, so many great songs, and they know how to execute a track. They make it long but not too long, and you get the kind of the vocals are always incredible from Omar, and I like what he did with At the Drive-In, but this is like next level stuff. It's incredible. It's off this album alone, this is one of my favourite bands, but with the stuff that followed as well, I wouldn't hesitate to put them as one of them, one of my favourite bands. But yeah, this album especially is just, it blew me away. Honestly, the first time I heard it, I was not expecting anything near as good as this, and I'm gonna try and buy it. I think a physical copy. It's on my wish list anyway. At least I'd love a vinyl copy of this really, but they're quite rare, I think. Key tracks for the album would be, I think I've probably already mentioned them, but Televators is my number one pick. Amazing song, beautiful song. And then Drunk Ship of Lanterns, which they're quite close really. Those two are definitely my two favourites. I'd edge it with Televators, but Drunk Ship of Lanterns comes very close. Brilliant album. So in fifth place we get the Mastodon album Crack the Sky, and Mastodon's a band which I was quite late to. I wasn't really that aware of them. I'd heard the name, but I remember I went to Sonosphere Festival in the UK in 2014. It had a really great lineup. It had Iron Maiden and the Prodigy headline two of the nights. A lot of great bands played there. I think Slayer played there. Um, but I went for one day. I went on the Sunday, which was the Metallica day, and there was Alice in Chains were there and Dream Theater, although we couldn't see them in the end. And one of the bands that were there was Mastodon, and I didn't know them at the time, and we didn't see them, and it's actually a little bit of a regret to not see them because afterwards, sort of quite soon afterwards, like a month or so afterwards, I really got into them, and I was like, we should. I can't believe I didn't watch them. Like, I'd heard of them as well. I should have just gone for it because they were a name that I recognised. But I don't even, we wouldn't have been doing anything, I don't think, at the time. Um, I mean, I got a lot of the bands I got into after that. You know, Gajira, and I listened to some Boningham. Was a band that we saw there, and they were always interesting. But for some reason, Mastodon I didn't check out, and I'm still kind of annoyed at that. But and then there was two other occasions since then which I also very nearly saw them at Leeds Festival in 2015. They were one of the reasons why I bought a ticket for the day I went, and they ended up not playing. And then the next year they were there, but they clashed with someone else, with Red Hot Chili Peppers. And as much as I love Mastodon, Red Hot Chili Peppers was an opportunity I couldn't pass up because just the nostalgia and the love I've had for them for a bit longer than Mastodon. But that's kind of going off topic. Mastodon were, when I started to listen to them, I kind of liked them more and more with each album I heard. So I heard their this was before their newest one had just come out, so I listened to that and I liked it. I heard The Hunter, which I liked even more. And I just played those two for a while, but then I finally moved on to some older stuff, and Crack the Sky was either the first or the second of their older music that I listened to. And when I heard it, I just thought this album is perfect. It's so good, like from Oblivion through to sort of through the title track, and The Last Baron is a really great song. It's a very ambitious album, you see. So from start to finish, it kind of gets more and more ambitious. It kind of steps up with every track, which is something I love. And the whole album sort of fits together. It could essentially be one suite of music. That's how great it is. And the only reason I think you couldn't really do that is because a lot of the time the tracks are suites of music. Especially the Sa. I actually don't know how to say that. I think it's the Sa. That's how you say it. But yeah, that's a very layered, progressive track. Some people don't like this album as much because it kind of departed a bit from the heavier style, but that doesn't bother me. I think the songwriting, the amazing songwriting, more than makes up for it. And this is probably my favorite album of undoubtedly my favorite album of 2009. Which is saying something considering the Kasabian record came out in that year as well. Key tracks would be Oblivion. I know it's a more popular choice, but it's still a great song. That sort of opening riff is fantastic. And then I think I would have to go with the last track, The Last Baron. Such a massive tune. Now, number four. I don't know if this was a more surprising choice considering my other choices, but if you know me, then it's not a surprise because um, I adore this album. It is, of course, as you'll have seen, um, Amy Winehouse, Back in Black. This album, I only recently got it on vinyl, and it was I left it in my record player for like 2 weeks straight. I absolutely adore this album. It's I'm not a jazz fan, but I like music when it incorporates jazz. I don't really like jazz on its own. There's a few decent records, I quite like the new Kamasi Washington record, but when other artists like Kendrick Lamar and To Pimp a Butterfly and some Lana Del Rey stuff, but this especially incorporates a lot of jazz elements. I know if you listen to Frank, her first record, it's a lot more of a jazz record, which is I think why I prefer this because it merges more styles. It's just like this album is just like it. Every time I listen to it, I like it more. I kind of grew up with sort of songs like Rehab and the title track, and You Know I'm No Good, sort of those bigger, sort of more famous songs. But I never really, I loved the songs, but I never really went ahead and listened to the album. And then I did maybe, I think I started to listen to the record after she passed away, and ever since then I just like every time I heard it for a while, it kept getting better and better, and now it's just like the only reason it's not still getting better is because it literally can't. Like it's definitely a classic album in my opinion of the 2000s. It was defining. A lot of artists now, I think, wouldn't be as big without her. Adele, and I know she's not as relevant now, but Duffy a few years ago, even someone like Ellie Goulding. A lot of these people very sort of stylized vocals. There's that El King track, X's and O's, which definitely does channel Amy Winehouse. On the new Izzy Bazoo album, you hear a lot of kind of that influence, especially in the opening track on that record. So she's this record I think is so influential, and it's amazing. I love it. Every song just evolves from the one before it in just the most perfect way, and the lyrics are so haunting as well. If you watch the documentary Amy, you'll see just how great her lyrics actually are, and I think a lot of people overlook that part of her because she has this amazing voice and her songs are so well arranged. And she has obviously she's got a lot of hits, so people overlook the fact that actually she's a fantastic lyricist, and it's a really sad record now that obviously with what's happened since then, since it was recorded and got put out. My key tracks on this record would be that's really tough, but You Know I'm No Good is probably my favourite Amy Winehouse song, and then you've got probably Tears Dry on Their Own is a really sad track. Pete Doherty did a great cover of it as well. I'll check that out. Okay, so now into the top three, and taking the first spot on the podium in third place is the Libertines, Up the Bracket, debut record from Libertines, one of the best bands I think this country's ever produced. Definitely one of the best bands of that era, though. Along with the Strokes, kind of defined that early 2000s kind of garage style. But I think these were so much better than the Strokes. I'm not saying all that because I do love the Strokes, but Pete Doherty, I just mentioned in the Amy Winehouse section, with his cover of Tear Shining Him, but he has such a beautiful voice, and Carl Barrett also has a great voice. They're very different. Carl Barrett has probably a better voice technically, and it's very impressive. It works really well in the kind of the sort of big songs, big bold anthemic tracks. And Pete Doherty's voice is works for the kind of the messier kind of and softer kind of more vulnerable sounding tracks. I love the co-frontman from they have going on. I think they've done it better than anyone else ever has. I know Fleetwood Mac do it pretty well, but I'm just talking with a double male vocalist instead of male and female. I'd love to see more bands do that. I think it's an underrated sort of option. Not enough people pursue that. But this album is it's kind of a touching record because it has. I know it may seem on the surface like a very rough sort of record that maybe they didn't care so much about. It's a lot of people say that it sounds messy and kind of like they didn't, it's not polished enough. They didn't. People say it doesn't sort of. It makes it sound like they're sort of too laid back, not taking it very seriously, and I can see where they're coming from. But that's kind of their thing. If you can get past, obviously if that's not something you enjoy, if you don't like the vocals, if you don't like the sort of guitar tones and the whole style, then you're not going to like this record. Maybe you'll like the second record, the self-titled record, more. And the newest record, Anthems for Doomed Youth, is probably even more up your street because that's even less like this. Not in a oh they've changed like really bad kind of way, just in a good way really. But if you can get past that, or if you like that, then this album is for you. It's lyrically, I always love Pete Doherty's lyrics. I think Gary Powell is a great drummer, very underrated drummer. And the chemistry that Doherty and Barrett had comes through so much on this record. I love this album so much, and a lot of other people do. This band is a very special band to a lot of people, and a lot of people knock them, but I think when you have a band that means this much to so many people, to a generation like this has, you shouldn't discard it so easily. This is like the pinnacle, in my opinion, of British indie music, or of that time anyway. Key tracks would be Horror Show and Time for Heroes, which is such a rousing kind of. It's an anthem. It's a definite anthem. I say that word a lot, but this is definitely an anthem. Now the runner-up is a album that just made it into the list because it was 2000 any earlier, and it would have been it wouldn't have made it in. But Radiohead Kid A is a. I remember the first time I heard this record, I thought I had not heard anything like this, and maybe that's naive to say. I still haven't heard anything like this. It's so beautiful, like the way it's put together, How to Disappear Completely, everything in its right place. Every song is just perfectly balanced between. It's like if anyone else tried this, it would come across as so pretentious. But this album just seems, it's artistic, it's poetic, it's beautifully done. I mean, the whole album is theatrical. I mean, I had a CD here, and the CD actually doesn't work; it's scratched. But you can see how much like thought they put into it. Because if you get behind this, the CD holder, you can take it out, and then inside we have another book, which is such a cool thing. Probably the best sort of, like, the packaging is amazing. Like, I love the cover, the artwork for the front of the album is great. That's what made me, when I wanted to get into Radiohead, and I'd heard a lot about OK Computer, but I loved the cover of this, so I listened to it. So I listened to this one. But I mean, it's like, how good is it? Like, seriously, like, it's incredible. It's just, I don't know. It's like Radiohead just like really really showed the world how to make music an art form and a performance within an album. But I'm not saying that they were the first to do it. The Beatles and Pink Floyd and countless bands have done it before, but in the modern era, no one does it as well as Radiohead. Their music is more than just music; it's a whole experience, and I respect that so much. The album itself is so well written as well. I think Tom York is one of those few musicians that I can genuinely say is a genius. Key tracks, How to Disappear Completely, and everything in its right place. And the winner, so my favourite album from the 2000s decade. It's Arctic Monkeys' debut record. Whatever people say I am, that's what I'm not. And this album is, if you remember in the Libertines bit, I said the pinnacle of British indie music, and then I backtracked a bit and said of that era, because I remembered afterwards that this was my number one pick, and this is the pinnacle of British indie, not just British indie, but indie in this way. Like, you get there's a lot of great indie records, like Neutral Milk Hotel, and sort of a lot of the Britpop stuff, and but this very specific type. I know indie is such a broad category. I shouldn't say it really, because it's not the best term to use. But in this style, this kind of post-punk revival, kind of garage rock, they just mastered it on this record. I think that, lyrically, the wordplay on this album is incredible. I know I mentioned Alex Turner's wordplay on back at the start of the video with the Last Shadow Puppets, and I don't think it's cheating, including Last Shadow Puppets and Arctic Monkeys. They are two bands. They sound different enough to be, they're not the same. They're not the same thing. But this record is one that I think a lot of people in this country around my age definitely resonate with. It sums up your sort of youthful life. You sort of whether it's sort of my age now with sort of university, like whether that's studying at university, whether it's a bit earlier with sort of college years or school, like sort of the later years of school, or whether it's in an actual job, whatever you're doing, whether it's working sort of in a job or whether it's sort of educational, you go there and you get through that day just so you can kind of enjoy yourself on the weekend, because what is the point of being young if you're not going to enjoy it? You know what I mean? It doesn't last forever. If you listen to the song Youth by Daughter, it's it alludes to this a lot. It's such a it makes you quite sad, because you think, like, when your youth is gone, like, I don't know, it's not something a lot of people want to think about, and this album helps you not think about it. It just makes you, like, sort of forget all your troubles, just go out and enjoy it. And this record, like I say, you can just put this on and it's an easy listen. It's easy to listen to. You can get straight into it. You can dip in and out of individual tracks. You can sort of be thoughtful and think about what he's saying, because there are some very sort of more sort of potent stuff, like on When the Sun Goes Down or Riot Van. Or you can, it's a fun record, but it's got sort of kind of, everyone knows the feelings that are portrayed on the album by Alex Turner. The massive observation, I think a review said. And that's so true. My favourite lyrics, I think, on this record are The View from the Afternoon. I just like, it's just something like, I don't know if it's a young thing, if it's an English thing, if it's an even more specific, like a Northern English thing, but this album is just like, it's like, it tells it's exactly the truth. Everyone that I know can relate to this record in some way. Everyone of my age, especially at the minute, and people who are older who look back. It's the most relatable record I have probably ever heard. And some people might sort of laugh at that, but maybe you're not in the right situation. Like, in the place that I am, and that all my friends are, this is the most relatable it gets, and that's partly why I love it so much, but also because musically, Matt Howard is an amazing drummer, probably one of the best drummers of the 2000s. The guitar work is always fresh. There's some great bass lines on here, like in A Certain Romance, and like I say, lyrics are a huge part of it, and the lyrics are great in here. Vocally, I think Alex Turner's voice has improved technically, as have his lyrics. They've got more poetic and sort of well put together, but his lyrics and his voice at this time is when I prefer it. It's like his most real. I feel, I'm not saying that his later stuff is like fake or anything like that, that's ridiculous, but this is kind of like, you can hear his accent in it, which is nice because my accent isn't really isn't that similar to it, but it is nice to hear people singing in a way kind of similar to how you speak, and I think everyone would agree with that. And it's just that some people hear their accent more often in music. The album is an album which I will treasure for the rest of my life, and I think a lot of other people will. And I know there's a lot of debate over the best Arctic Monkeys album, but for me, they will never beat this or top this. I don't think it's even possible for them to. Key tracks: When the Sun Goes Down and Mardy Bum, just for the sing along. Put that on in the club. Everyone sings it as one. It's kind of nice to see, actually. So there you have my second Top 10 Tuesday. Again, maybe a little bit long. I'll see when I've edited it, but I'm gonna try and cut these down at some point. It's just these first couple of topics have been quite big topics on me. I can talk for days about them, really. If you have any sort of ideas for future top 10s, which will go out on Tuesdays, don't worry. I wanted to bring you this video because I was quite proud. Well, this was before I made it because my camera wouldn't record, but I knew it was going to be a video I was going to enjoy making, and it was going to come out well. I hope it's come out well. I didn't want to miss out on this, so I just uploaded a bit late. My channel is going to get more organised, don't worry. And I'm going to definitely bring you that classic review that I promised at some point. Whether I'll do 2 on Sunday, whether I'll try and find time to do this one before Sunday and then another on Sunday, I don't know. We're still getting to the schedule here. It's still a new channel, so I am sorry if it's a bit sort of messy and all over the place, but that's what it's all about. I think it's, it shows I'm a human, right? It's real. You want to see real stuff. But if you have any suggestions for good top 10 ideas, I have a few up my sleeve. I've got there's going to be some great stuff coming out. It's December tomorrow. I have some great sort of stuff related to Christmas to come up, and when you get after Christmas, you're going to sort of get like sort of year-end lists, sort of favourite albums and singles and sort of stuff like that. But I'll give you more information at the time. If you want to get information quicker, then there is a Twitter account for this channel, which is in the description. I mentioned before, you can check out my Rate Your Music. If you want to kind of get ahead of the sort of the rest of the people when I'm doing reviews, because if I review an album, any album that I listen to, I'll put my score on there. So if I review it, I'll have already put the score on there. So get ahead of that if you want. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and join me whenever I upload. It could be any time. It could be in another 5 minutes. It could be, in 5 weeks. Who knows? Hopefully not in 5 weeks. But cheers for sticking with it. I know it's a long video, but I will see you next time.